The sound of the clock filled the apartment like a second heartbeat. Tick, tick, tick. Each second a reminder that the dinner I cooked was going cold. 2 plates, 2 glasses of wine, only 1 chair pulled out. The pasta had started to stick together, and the candles burned too low to look romantic anymore. I leaned back, exhaled, and whispered to no one, "Patience, Ashley. You've always had patience." That was supposed to be my strength, being the calm one, the one who didn't raise her voice, who waited, who believed love was a plant that just needed time and light. But lately, it felt like I'd been watering something already dead. My name is Ashley Harbaugh. I'm 29 years old, and for 3 years, I believed I was in a stable, balanced relationship. Isaac and I were the perfect contrast. I was the architect who thrived on structure and precision. He was a marketing consultant with a restless imagination and a tendency to act first, think later. He used to say I grounded him. Now he just said I limited him. That shift didn't happen overnight. It began in whispers, small things I almost missed. New clothes, different music. Sudden phrases that didn't sound like him, vibes, authentic energy, alignment. Then came the talk about his new workplace, open-minded, creative, different. He'd smile when he mentioned his coworkers, especially one name I kept hearing, Lena. At first, I didn't think anything of it. He said she was inspiring, free-spirited someone who saw the world differently. I told myself not to overthink. I was secure. I trusted him. But trust started to feel like standing in the middle of a dark room pretending you weren't hearing footsteps. When he finally walked in that night, hours late, the door clicked softly like an apology he didn't mean. "Traffic?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He grinned, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Lost track of time." We grabbed drinks after work. He smelled like citrus and someone else's perfume. I nodded. "You could have texted." He shrugged. "Didn't want to be rude, you know. Everyone was talking. I didn't even notice the time." I tried to let it go. I really did. But something about the way he said everyone too quickly, too defensive, told me he'd noticed the time perfectly. He sat down, poured himself a glass of wine, then looked at the plate I'd made. "You didn't have to cook," he said, taking a sip. "I wanted to," I replied. "It's Friday." He smiled faintly. "You're sweet." The way he said it, soft, almost pitying, made my stomach twist. That night, while he showered, I walked past his phone on the counter. A notification lit up Lena. "You always make everything feel alive." I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The message wasn't proof of anything, just tone. That's what always betrays people first, tone. Over the next few weeks, Isaac changed in pieces. He started staying out later, talking about new perspectives. He'd say things like, "Our generation doesn't need labels," or "People evolve, and that's okay." Once, when I reached for his hand in public, he pulled away gently and said, "Don't take this the wrong way. PDA just feels performative now." Performative, as if love needed an audience. I smiled through it. Because that's what I'd been taught. Don't react, don't escalate, don't push. But silence, I've learned, is its own kind of surrender. Then came the night that replayed in my head like a bad song. We were lying on the couch watching a documentary. Something about tribes that believed love had no ownership. He muted the TV halfway through and asked, "Ashley, do you ever feel like we're too conventional?" I looked at him confused. Conventional how? He stared at the ceiling. Like we're following a script someone else wrote. You know, dates, exclusivity promises. It's so predictable. I half laughed. "You mean like a relationship?" He sighed, eyes still fixed on the ceiling. "See, you always make it sound like I'm wrong for wanting more." "More of what, Isaac?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He just got up, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Forget it. You wouldn't understand." That's when I knew something was breaking. Not loud, not messy, just quiet, like the sound of glass cracking under pressure before it actually shatters. In the mirror that night, I studied my reflection, the same face he used to say was home. Now I looked like someone waiting for a door that would never open again. I told myself patience was love, but maybe patience was just the prettier name for denial. And somewhere deep down, I already knew what was coming. Mornings used to be soft between us. Shared coffee. Quiet music. Little jokes about whose turn it was to wash the mugs. Now they were choreographed silences. He scrolled. I brewed. We existed in the same space like two ghosts, haunting the memory of what used to be a home. Isaac had started talking differently. Not just the words, the weight of them. He'd come home with sentences that didn't belong to him. People should follow desire, not obligation. Attachment is ego. Control kills love. At first, I'd smile amused. You sound like one of those self-help podcasts. He'd grin and reply, maybe I'm finally learning something. But every something he learned seemed to erase a part of us. The more he discovered freedom, the less room there was for me in it. He spent more time at work, or creative nights as he called them, and every time I asked what that meant, he'd shrug and say, just brainstorming with the team. The team had a name now, Lena. I didn't ask questions, not because I didn't want to know, but because I already did. One night, I came home from a late project meeting and found Isaac on the balcony, wine in hand, music playing low. He didn't hear me at first. He was laughing softly into his phone, and then he said it, not my name, hers. He turned when he saw me. Hey, he said, casually lowering the phone. Didn't hear you come in. Who were you talking to? Just Lena. She's having a rough week. I stood there in the doorway, his face half lit by the city lights, and for a brief second I wanted to believe him. Because believing him was easier than admitting that something sacred was slipping away one phone call at a time. He gestured at the wine bottle. Want a glass? No, thanks. You sure it's that one you like? That one I like was for anniversaries. He paused, lips tightening. You don't have to make everything sound so heavy, Ashley. Heavy. That's what love becomes when one person stops carrying their half. The next weekend, he asked if I wanted to go with him to a coworker's art show. I said yes, before realizing he didn't actually mean with me. I'll probably just meet people there, he said when I got ready. You don't really like that scene. I stopped mid-step. What scene is that? He smiled like I was being dramatic. The uninhibited kind. He left smelling like excitement and possibilities. I stayed home smelling like rosemary and waiting. When he returned hours later, I was asleep on the couch or pretending to be. He whispered into his phone as he walked past. I heard the smile in his voice. That night, I dreamed of falling not from a height, but from a memory. 2 days later, he brought up the topic again carefully, like testing the temperature of a wound. We were eating dinner. He set down his fork and said, Do you ever think maybe people aren't meant to be with just one person? I looked up. You mean emotionally or physically? He shrugged. Both. I mean, love shouldn't be ownership, right? I put down my glass. Is this about Lena? His fork clinked against the plate. God, you always assume the worst. Can't I just talk about ideas without you making it personal? Because it is personal, I said quietly. You don't talk about abstract freedom while someone else is in your bed. He froze. You think I'm sleeping with her? I didn't blink. Are you? The silence was sharp. He laughed once bitterly. You're too traditional sometimes. Traditional, I repeated. You mean loyal? He stood up, pacing. See, this is what I mean. You box everything in with labels. You need to grow a little, Ashley. I stared at him calm and cold. Grow into what someone who calls betrayal spiritual growth. His jaw flexed. You're impossible when you get like this. When he slammed the door that night, the sound didn't echo like it used to. It just landed, like the final nail in something that had already died weeks ago. Days turned into patterns work. Silence, small talk, avoidance. We stopped kissing goodnight. Stopped texting during the day. Stopped being we. Every evening, I'd pass the mirror by the hallway, and each time I saw less of myself and more of a woman learning to stand still while everything around her collapsed. But then one night, while brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection and said aloud, maybe he's right. Maybe I am too traditional. The thought hung in the air, absurd but freeing, because it wasn't a weakness. It was a choice to love with boundaries, to stay loyal when it meant something. And if that made me traditional, so be it. I didn't know it yet, but that small thought, that moment of defiance, would be the seed of everything that came after. It was late past midnight when Isaac came home that night. The lights in the living room were dim, just enough to cast soft shadows across the floor. I'd left them on deliberately. I wanted him to see I was still awake. He froze when he saw me sitting on the couch, my laptop closed, wine glass untouched. Ashley. He said carefully, like testing the air. Didn't expect you to wait up. I noticed I replied my tone flat. He set down his keys and ran a hand through his hair. I was just at Lena's. She needed someone to talk to. I cut in. He blinked. She's going through something okay. So are we? I said softly. But you don't seem as interested in talking about that. He sighed and leaned against the counter. You always make it sound like a crime to care about someone else. No, I said, looking up at him. It's not caring I have a problem with. It's pretending that care isn't crossing a line. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the refrigerator was louder than both our breathing. Then he walked over, sat across from me, and said almost too calmly, "I've been thinking about us. About love, what it really means." The speech. I'd heard parts of it before, little fragments after his late nights and self-discovery talks, but tonight it felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced it for an audience that wasn't me. "Go on," I said. He looked relieved, like I'd given him permission to deliver a sermon. "I think real love is about freedom, about not holding each other back. We should be able to explore what we feel without guilt." I tilted my head. "Explore how?" He hesitated, then said it like a man confessing to a noble cause. "If you really love me, you'd let me sleep with her." The words didn't hit like thunder. They landed quiet, sharp, surgical. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. None came. He sat there watching my face, waiting for my reaction. When I didn't answer, he leaned forward. "Ashley, this is me being honest. This is what authentic love looks like. No cages, no control." I blinked once. "You want me to give you permission to cheat?" He winced. That word. Why do you have to make everything sound ugly? "This isn't cheating. It's transparency. It's about truth." "Truth," I repeated slowly. "You want to sleep with someone else and still call it truth." He exhaled, frustrated. "You don't get it. It's not about the act. It's about the freedom. Love shouldn't mean possession." I almost laughed. "Isaac, I never possessed you. You walked in and out as you pleased. You just want me to bless it now so you can feel righteous." He stood, pacing, voice rising. "I thought you were evolved enough to understand everyone's experimenting with openness now. Why can't we—" "Because we were supposed to be enough," I whispered. He stopped, looked at me, and in that pause, the weight of silence pressed down harder than any argument ever could. Then I said clearly, "If that's what you need to do, Isaac, then go." He frowned, disoriented. "Go. You mean, I mean, go. Be free. Experience whatever truth you're chasing." I looked him straight in the eyes. "But don't expect me to still be here when you're done." He blinked, trying to read me. "You're serious completely." He opened his mouth, closed it, then smiled awkwardly, almost smug. "I knew you'd understand," he said, as if I'd just proven how enlightened he was. I watched him gather his things, his phone, his jacket, his watch, all the symbols of someone who thought leaving was liberation. As he reached the door, I said, "Isaac?" He turned. "Freedom without consequence isn't freedom," I said. "It's cowardice." He rolled his eyes slightly like the philosopher who'd just outgrown his student. "Maybe someday you'll see it differently," he said. Then he left, humming a tune I used to love. The door clicked shut, soft and final. I sat there staring at the space he'd just occupied, the echo of his cologne fading into the air. No tears, no screaming, just stillness. And in that stillness, a thought surfaced, quiet and terrifying. Maybe this is what clarity feels like. The next morning, I didn't text him. Didn't check if he made it home. Didn't tell anyone what happened. I just made coffee for one, sat by the window, and watched the city wake up the world, still turning indifferent to the fact that mine had stopped. For the first time in years, I realized that peace and emptiness look the same at the beginning. Silence. It has a texture, you know. It starts thin, barely noticeable, then stretches across every hour, every room, until it coats your world like frost. That's what my apartment became after Isaac left a museum of quiet. The first few mornings, I expected to hear him. The half-sung hums from the shower, the soft curse when he couldn't find his watch, the "see you tonight" he'd call from the door. But the air stayed still, no footsteps, no keys, no voice, just the sound of the coffee machine sputtering a noise, far too alive for a space that felt so dead. I didn't block him, didn't delete our pictures, didn't unfollow him online, not out of hope, out of observation. I wanted to see what he'd do with his newfound freedom. Spoiler, nothing noble. The first few days he didn't text, didn't call, didn't even check if I was okay. That told me everything. Work became my anchor. Design proposals, client calls, late night sketching until my fingers cramped. Every building model I made felt like a metaphor, foundation's weight balance. All the things we'd lost. My coworkers noticed the change. "You're quieter," my friend Mia said one afternoon. "I'm just tired," I replied. She studied me for a long second. "You don't look tired. You look emptied out." I smiled. That's one way to put it. That evening, I came home to find one of his shirts still hanging behind the door. Light gray, soft cotton. He used to wear it when we cooked together. I almost took it down, then stopped. Let it hang there, a reminder. Not of him, but of how easily people leave and how objects stay. A week passed, then another. No word from Isaac, but his shadow was everywhere. In the grocery store, I reached for his favorite cereal out of habit. At red lights, I caught myself glancing at the passenger seat, expecting him to make some dumb joke. At night, I rolled toward the cool side of the bed and still left space for someone who wasn't coming back. Healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in during small rebellions, like cooking for one without sadness, or sleeping through the night without checking your phone, or realizing you can breathe just fine without good morning texts. I wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. It was something quieter, colder, a kind of clarity I hadn't known before. The part of me that used to hope had gone still. One Saturday morning, while watering my plants, I noticed one of them, a small ivy, had started growing sideways instead of up. No matter how I turned it toward the light, it reached the other way. It made me think of Isaac always chasing some sun that didn't belong to him. I whispered, "You'll burn out there," before realizing I was talking to a plant. But maybe I wasn't. That same day, I got a message from a mutual friend. "Hey, saw Isaac last night at a bar with Lena. Looked rough." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because of course he looked rough. People always do when they finally get the thing they thought they wanted. By the 10th day, I noticed a shift inside me. The ache was still there, but duller. Like an old wound that no longer hurt, just reminded you where the knife went in. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the window. The city hummed outside, alive, chaotic, uncaring. I watched strangers cross the street below, each one carrying invisible heartbreaks of their own. And I thought maybe love isn't supposed to be a rescue. Maybe it's just supposed to be honest. I raised the glass toward the night and whispered, "To freedom." It didn't taste like revenge. It tasted like release. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Not really. Because men like Isaac always come back, not when they miss you, but when life stops applauding them. And when he did, I promised myself I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't yell. I'd simply stand in the ruins he made and let him see what peace looks like without him in it. It was a Thursday when his name finally lit up my phone again. Isaac. 2 weeks since he'd walked out humming like he'd just discovered enlightenment. I stared at the screen, letting it ring twice before answering. "Hey," I said, voice even. "Ashley, can we talk?" The sound of him was shaky thin, like someone trying not to break mid-sentence. I waited. I need to see you, please. I could hear noise in the background. Cars. Wind. Maybe fear. So I said what he didn't expect. "Okay, come by." When the doorbell rang that evening, I already knew what I'd see. Not the confident man who'd preached freedom 2 weeks ago. Not the dreamer who'd told me love should be limitless, but a hollow-eyed version of him dressed in guilt, drenched in panic. He stood at the door, holding his jacket in his hands like a shield. "Ashley," he breathed, almost relieved that I hadn't slammed it shut. I nodded once and stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated before entering, as if the apartment itself might judge him. His eyes scanned the place, her mug still gone, the shirt behind the door, still hanging the plants greener than before. "Everything looks the same," he murmured. "That's the point," I said quietly. "Some things stay." He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I messed up. I didn't move, didn't offer comfort. What kind of mess? He looked up at me, eyes red, voice trembling. I thought I could separate things. I thought it would feel freeing, but it didn't. It felt empty. "Empty," I repeated. "Freedom doesn't feel as romantic when it costs you everything, does it?" He swallowed hard. I didn't mean for it to go this far. "Go how far?" That's when he said it. The line I'll never forget. Lena might be pregnant. The words didn't hit like thunder again, just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the world tilt slightly off its axis. I looked at him for a long moment. He kept his eyes down, maybe waiting for anger, but there was nothing left in me to explode, just the faint ache of confirmation. Then I said calmly, "You got exactly what you wanted." He looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You said love should be free." "Well, that's freedom." Isaac, unfiltered and real. "You didn't want rules. Rules are what stop things like this." He shook his head. "Don't talk like that. I didn't want this. I didn't mean—" "Of course you didn't mean it," I said softly. "You never mean the damage until it's done." He reached toward me, desperate. "Please don't do this. I know I hurt you, but I need you. I can't handle this alone." Something in me snapped, not in fury, but in finality. "You chose alone," I said. "You stood here and told me love meant letting you go." So I did. Tears streamed down his face now, and he covered them with his hands. I was wrong. I was so wrong, Ashley. I thought I was being brave. I thought I was learning something new. But all I learned is that freedom means nothing when there's no one waiting at home. I stood still, my voice calm and cold. You're not wrong about that part. He looked up at me, then eyes full of disbelief. You're not even angry, I was. For a while. Then I realized anger ties me to you. I don't want that anymore. He flinched as if I'd hit him harder than a slap. You don't mean that. I mean every word I said. You found your freedom. Now live with it. He tried again, desperate now. Please, Ashley, I still love you. You know that. I almost smiled. Love without respect isn't love, Isaac. It's just possession dressed up as philosophy. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. And for the first time since he left, I didn't feel pain watching him cry. I felt clarity. When he finally looked up again, his face was pale. So that's it. You're just done. I was done the night you asked for permission to betray me. He stood unsteady. I don't even know who I am anymore. You will, I said, when you stop defining yourself by who's willing to forgive you. He looked around the room one last time, maybe searching for the version of me who used to wait up for him, who'd have folded him into her arms despite everything. But she was gone. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry. I know, I said. Now go, be free. He turned toward the door. This time he didn't hum. He didn't say goodbye. He just left quietly like a ghost, leaving the house he used to haunt. When the door closed, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And for the first time, the silence didn't ache. It soothed. Freedom, I realized, isn't the absence of love. It's the absence of chains. After Isaac left the second time, the quiet that followed didn't hurt anymore. It wasn't empty. It was earned. Peace had a new texture now. He'd taken chaos with him when he walked out the door, and in its place, I found space to breathe. Days began to stretch cleanly again. Mornings with sunlight slipping through the blinds instead of anxiety. Coffee that actually stayed warm long enough to finish. Music playing without every lyric feeling like a wound. Healing didn't feel like triumph. It felt like steady stillness. Like remembering who you were before someone convinced you that love meant endurance. A week later, Mia came over. She brought a bottle of white wine, and that look friends wear when they want to ask, but don't know if they should. I saved her the trouble. He came back, I said, setting out glasses. Her eyes widened, and he left again. What did he want? Forgiveness he hadn't earned. Mia studied me. And you didn't give it? I smiled faintly. I gave him silence. It's cleaner. We toasted without saying to what. Maybe to endings that finally stayed ended. Work felt lighter too. My sketches grew bolder, my designs more daring. One of my clients told me, there's more emotion in your work lately. I smiled because she was right. Pain leaves fingerprints on art, you just have to stop smudging them long enough to see their shape. Sometimes I still caught myself wondering where Isaac was, what he was doing, whether the pregnancy was real. But the questions no longer ached, they just passed through like weather. One night his sister called. Ashley, she said softly, I don't want to intrude, but Isaac's been staying at our parents' place. Things are rough. I didn't answer. She continued. He's a mess. He told them everything. Well, his version. I let the silence stretch. She sighed. He's not sleeping. Keeps saying he lost the only person who ever truly saw him. I looked out the window at the dark city sky. Maybe he's finally seeing himself, I said. That's a start. Her voice softened. He's sorry. Good, I said. That's for him, not for me. She didn't know what to say after that. Neither did I. We hung up quietly. Weeks turned into a rhythm. Work, gym, evening walks under streetlights. Simple things that had stopped being simple when I was with him. I planted new succulents by the window. They didn't need much, just space, light, and restraint. The kind of love that thrives when you stop overwatering. Maybe that's what I'd been all along, someone who watered what couldn't grow. Sometimes I'd pass places we used to go, the cafe where he'd write copy for campaigns, the bookstore where he once bought me a poetry collection he never read. It used to sting. Now it just felt like walking past old wallpaper, something that used to matter to a room I no longer lived in. One evening, Mia and I were at a rooftop bar. The skyline shimmered wind in our hair. City noise below us like a heartbeat. She leaned in. You look different. Different good or different bad? Good, lighter, like you finally remembered where your skin ends and his shadow starts. I laughed softly. Maybe I just stopped auditioning for the wrong role. What role was that, she asked. The forgiving woman. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight across my face. I didn't check my phone immediately. Didn't brace myself for disappointment. Didn't wonder what version of Isaac would text me next. Instead, I brewed coffee, opened my balcony door, and let the cool air in. For the first time in months, I caught myself humming. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was rhythm. And somewhere deep inside, I realized that closure doesn't arrive with an apology. It arrives with acceptance. I didn't need to know if he was suffering. I didn't need to hear him say I was right. The moment I stopped waiting for that was the moment I got everything I needed. Still, I couldn't shake one truth. People like Isaac always return again, when the silence they left behind grows louder than the applause they chased. I didn't know when, but I knew he would. And when he did, I wouldn't need to raise my voice or slam a door or cry into the night. I'd just look at him the way peace looks at chaos, with recognition, not regret. 3 months passed before it happened. By then, Isaac had become a ghost I'd stopped expecting to see again. A memory softened by time, reduced to background noise. Life had found its rhythm. Again work. Laughter. Calm evenings. And the quiet pride that comes from surviving what once felt unsurvivable. So when I heard my name at the cafe that afternoon, it took me a moment to realize the voice was real. Ashley. I turned, and there he was. Isaac looked different. Not older. Not thinner, emptier. The kind of emptiness that comes when you finally run out of people to blame. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. He was holding a to-go cup that trembled in his hand. Hey, I said, calm, polite. He smiled weakly. You look good. I feel good, I replied. He nodded slowly, as if trying to process what that meant. I heard you got promoted, he said after a pause. Yeah, lead designer now. That's amazing. Congratulations. We stood there surrounded by the noise of espresso machines and casual chatter, two people sharing a silence too personal for a public space. Then he exhaled. I'm, living with my parents again. I didn't flinch. I see. It didn't work out with Lena. I didn't say anything, just waited. He swallowed. She kept saying she wasn't ready for real life. When I told her about the pregnancy, she panicked, said she needed space. Then she blocked me. I nodded once, so she wanted freedom too. He looked at me, a flicker of shame in his eyes. Yeah, he whispered. Guess I got a taste of my own sermon. The words hung between us, almost poetic in their irony. I thought about you a lot, he said. Why, I asked. Because you were right, he admitted, voice trembling. Freedom without consequence isn't freedom. It's just running away. I thought I was chasing something real, but all I found was emptiness. For the first time, I believed him. Not because I wanted to, but because regret had finally softened his tone into truth. He stepped closer. Ashley, I miss you. I miss us. I miss the peace I had when I was with you. I smiled faintly. That wasn't peace, Isaac. That was me carrying the weight of your chaos and calling it love. He flinched. I know I hurt you, he said quietly, but I swear I've changed. I see it now. I'd do anything to make it right. I tilted my head. You said that every time you crossed a line. You said it like it was a prayer, but it was just a habit. He looked desperate now. You can't just walk away from everything we had. I already did, I said softly. His eyes glistened. You can't mean that. You still care about me. I can see it. I care, I said. But caring doesn't mean keeping someone who teaches you pain. He shook his head. I thought you'd fight for me. I did, I said, by letting you go. That shut him up. His lips parted, but no sound came. He looked lost, not for me, but for the version of himself that only existed in my forgiveness. I just thought, he began, then stopped. I thought you'd always love me. I did, I replied, but love doesn't survive disrespect. He stared at me unblinking, as if those words had finally stripped away the last illusion he had left. Ashley, please, he whispered. Just one more chance. I shook my head. You've had enough chances to build a life with me. You chose to dismantle it instead. He was crying now quietly, the way people do when they realize no performance will save them. I don't know what to do without you. You learn, I said. That's what I did. I picked up my coffee, the conversation ending as gently as it began. Goodbye, Isaac. He reached out as if to stop me, but then let his hand fall, and I could see the exact moment he realized there was nothing left to reach for. As I walked out into the sunlight, a breeze moved through my hair, cool and light, almost cleansing. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because closure isn't a door slamming. It's the sound of your own footsteps walking away without hesitation. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker alive one by one. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving something. I felt like I was living again. My last thought before bed was simple. Peace doesn't come when they apologize.